On Sunday, September 18th, Civic Square and 23rd Street in front of the library downtown will look a lot different. Tents will be set up with different activities and entertainment for all ages, and hundreds of author readings will be taking place throughout the day from both local and national authors. Yes, you guessed it, we are talking about the 6th annual Word on the Street Festival, a free Saskatoon event celebrating our province's literary community. On today's show, we'll be speaking with a couple of authors a part of this year's festival as we get more details on this year's event. It's all coming up on today's new Go on Shaw TV. Later on the show, a trio of local theatre companies are preparing for their 2016-2017 season, and local author Alice Kuiper tells us how having a big family inspires her writing. We're here on 23rd Street and 4th Avenue. The streets in this area will be closed down on September 18th for the Word on the Street Festival. This free event is a great place for families to discover or rediscover their love for reading. The University of Saskatchewan is another place where reading is encouraged, but as Simon Haidt tells us, they also promote hands-on learning.
That's the reaction it receives.
Often it's difficult to see the things that are created on campus at the University of Saskatchewan, be they ideas or research happening at the microscopic level. However, the fruits of Professor Yann Martel's work aren't only tangible, they've been served to her on a plate.
The food services on campus here had a salad, and as I was eating it, I was recognizing some of the vegetables that we had grown. So one of our biggest successes that we were a bit surprised with was how well the lettuce has been growing.
But this produce didn't come from a field on the outskirts of campus. It was grown in the middle of things, here on the roof of the agriculture building. The site was once home to condensers used to cool the phytotron area, which have since been removed.
Which left a very open, just lifeless space here. And walking by that, we decided, yeah, we need to fill that place and prove that you can grow food on roofs in Saskatoon.
Professor Grant Wood saw opportunity in the open space and this summer began work converting the area. It was no simple undertaking, however. Safety railings needed to be updated, and they had to find a way to get water to the roof. But most of all, they had to ensure it could hold the weight of pots, people, and planting material.
It weighs a lot, and then once we start to water it, then you're looking at a lot of weight. So that's one of the things that if people do have a rooftop and they're wanting to establish something like this, is that they do need to know whether or not their rooftops can accommodate that weight.
Once those obstacles were overcome, the rooftop garden grew into an immediate success. Since being planted in mid-June, it has yielded hundreds of pounds of produce.
We've been getting about 10 pounds of lettuce per barrel. Cucumbers probably get 5 pounds, 2 to 5 pounds every other day kind of thing. So it's been a nice continuous thing.
And the roots of the project have spread throughout campus, as the plants are grown using compost created here. And the produce is then sold to culinary services to be served to students and staff.
They have a dehydrator in place at the culinary services. They dry down excess product, which is shipped back and composted. So from composting to production to consumption to compost is less than a mile. So instead of calling them food miles, this stuff is traveling food feet.
And as the prospect of finding ways to garden in an urban environment becomes more attractive, this plot will provide educational opportunities to ag students. The unique growing conditions here ensure they will have study materials for at least part of the new school term, long after typical gardens may have stopped producing.
With the reflection off the glass, with the concrete floor, it gets hot, and it's going to retain the heat. So after we get a few frosts, we'll cover things. We hopefully will still keep growing the cool season crops and keep harvesting well into October.
And there are plans to expand the garden to the north side of this walkway next year, which will likely increase the already great amount of attention being paid to the plot by people who pass through. Those involved say they are happy that it may get people thinking more about alternative ways of gardening. even if they sometimes do feel like they are in an aquarium.
We're constantly having people waving at us and stopping by just to see what's going on. And Joel and I were talking yesterday that I think our favorite thing is when we're just walking down the hallway, sort of incognito, and we overhear people talking about the garden and the enthusiasm and excitement.
For Go on Shaw TV, I'm Simon Hyatt.
Since 2010, the Word on the Street Saskatoon has featured some of Canada's finest literary talents. This marks the 6th annual year for this festival, and it is shaping up to be a great one. Joining me right now is Executive Director of Word on the Street, Mary Jane Cavello. Thank you so much for joining us, Mary Jane. What a beautiful day.
What a great day.
Yeah, especially now in September.
That's
September 18th is the date of this year's Word on the Street Festival. Like I mentioned, lots of great authors at this year's event. Let's talk a little bit about the big names, Biff Naked and David Suzuki. Why involve such big names like that?
Wow, what a coup for us, really. I mean, David Suzuki, we put out a request for him to attend and read, and he was delighted. So he, came back to us and said, I want to participate and I want to read in the adult tent and the children tent. So we were just so thrilled about that. And then Biff Naked, absolutely. She has a new memoir out this year, and she couldn't be more of a sweetheart. She sends me emails saying, I'm counting the sleeps. So she's very excited to be back in Saskatoon, and we're excited to have her. There is something for everyone from ages 2 to 92, and that it's free. That's the best part. We have all of these authors. We're very lucky to have a number of best-selling authors living right here in Saskatoon, in addition to our national headliners. And they're all coming, and they're all excited to be here, and they want to talk to everyone. And it's a very intimate, personal festival where you can be up close with your favorite authors.
Now, we are standing in Civic Square right now. This space will be absolutely transformed. Tell us what will be going on.
Well, behind us in Civic Square is actually what we call Kid Street.
Cool.
And in Kid Street, we have an area called Literacy Lane and the children's reading tent called Treasure Island Tent. So in Literacy Lane, we take a whole bunch of activities and we sort of replicate some of the ideas that they're taught in the children's tent. And basically, it's just a fun time for kids. And we have quite a few people and organizations participating in Literacy Lane, like the Remy Modern Art Gallery and the Children's Discovery Museum, and also the Office of the Treaty Commissioner will be here teaching children Cree and doing bookmarks, and also we'll have a real teepee where we can have some preschool fun. So it's for everyone of every age. And then of course in the reading tent, we've got our local celebrities like Kuiper, and then we've also got David Suzuki, and another really big get for us were the Fancy Nancy authors and illustrators will be here sharing their tales.
Perfect. So of course the author readings are a highlight of this event, but lots of hands-on activities for the younger participants or the younger kids that come out to the festival. Let's talk about the dialogue and the discussion. I personally love this component of the festival. Aside from hearing these authors read, they then will talk a little bit about their works and with the public. Tell us a bit about that.
Absolutely. In fact, reading is a very small part of it because you can go out and read their books. What it's really about is connecting with authors. So they talk a little about their books, but really what they're after is making that personal connection with you, the audience, and you can ask them questions and get their takes on different things. So it's really quite exciting.
A full schedule is available online. I believe it's thewordonthestreet.ca. Is that correct?
Yes.
All right, so head to thewordonthestreet.ca for all that information. It starts at 10:30 a.m. on Sunday, September 18th, goes all the way till 5 p.m. So lots for families to do. Mary Jane, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Punch TV, it's the nerdiest show on the airwaves, featuring artists, geeks, and special guests who love comics, toys, and pop culture. Watch Punch TV, only on Shaw TV.
Still to come, we learn why Swift Currents Creek is a significant part of the city's history. And award-winning writer Yann Martel tells us how the Word on the Street Festival benefits both the authors and their readers.
Hey folks, it's Larry Krause here with the Timberline Music Show. Join me and my special guest for a half hour of great music right here on Shaw TV.
If you're more interested in theater than literature, you're in luck as local companies are preparing for a new season. 3 groups that share a space recently unveiled their plans for the 2016-2017 season. Simon Hyatt has a preview.
Welcome, thank you.
As thousands of children are dealing with a mix of excitement and fear with the start of another school year, the same can be said for local theater companies as they head off into the unknown with another season of drama.
Yeah, it's always the same feeling, you know, it's a little bit of excitement and a little bit of also a pleasure so everything is okay, everything is ready, and we're ready to start, you know, after months of organization.
The 3 companies that share space at Studio 914, Le Troupe du Jour, Summer Players, and Gordon Titusis Niganiwan Theatre, held a joint event to launch their respective theater seasons. But that's not the only way in which they pool resources.
None of us stand alone, right? We all need each other, and that does happen. We'll be like, do you happen to have a fog machine? Oh yeah, we've got it, you can borrow it. You know, we all work together, we're all in the same nonprofit boat. We're all trying to put on the best quality show we can. So it's nice that we have this community here in Saskatoon.
For GTNT, the focus will remain on highlighting First Nations issues, an increasingly interesting area for artistic director Curtis Petatus, with recent developments in relation to the Truth and Reconciliation Commission and the launch of the inquiry into murdered and missing Indigenous women.
It's very neat to have the extra attention at the moment right now, and I wouldn't say it's informed our season, because Curtis, he plans the season out like years in advance, and I really just attribute it to his creativity and in his scope of what's going on in the world.
Saskatoon Summer Players will present a diverse comedic slate with You're a Good Man Charlie Brown and Monty Python's Spam-A-Lot, all staged by a cast and crew of community volunteers.
People are willing to dedicate this much time away from their families. You know, they go to work and then they come and do this. So like it's a huge commitment, and I think it's got to be fueled by love and friendship, because the love for musical theater and then the friendships that grow through these productions.
La Troupe du Jour artistic director Denis Rouleau says it can be challenging finding plays that will appeal to both French and English-speaking audiences, young and old, and in a variety of genres.
It's a long process, you know, because to find a balance, you know, like, you know, for a new play, repertoire, a little bit of comedy, a little bit of more serious things. So that takes time and lots of readings.
Throughout the theater season, we will have previews of specific plays here on Shaw TV. For Go, I'm Simon Hyatt.
We have a beautiful background here at Civic Square right outside of City Hall. It is one of the locations for the Word on the Street Festival that's coming up on September 18th, joined by the lovely Alice Kuiper. She is a best-selling young adult and children's book author. Alice, let's start right there. You have so many great picture books. Victor and Violet are one of your series. Tell us a bit about that series.
So at Word on the Street this year, I'll be talking about the second one with Maureen Fergus. I think it's at 11 in the morning at one of the tents that's going to be here in the square. They have another adventure where they're writing a story and there may be a little arguing as they try and figure out the best way to tell their tale.
So having 4 children and a busy family life at home, is that inspiration for books like this?
I think I'm lucky that I'm able to spend as much time with my kids as I do, and then I'm able to close the door, go into my office and maybe be inspired by some of the things they've said and done, or some of the things I'm noticing that is important to them in their lives. So Violet and Victor looks lightly at sibling rivalry and how you can make something creative and fun out of the day-to-day squabbling of life. So I think I try and use what happens in my day-to-day life, but I also like to shut the door and leave the children on the other side.
Well, exactly. So for writing, I can only imagine you need somewhere tranquil and quiet. So how is it balancing that busy family life with your career?
So Maureen Fergus and I are doing a later event at Word on the Street on Sunday, where we'll be talking about exactly how we managed to navigate the complications of having lots of children and publishing lots of books. Both she and I work as young adult and picture book authors, and now I have a chapter book series coming out too.
Yes.
And yeah, between us we have tons of kids. So we're talking about how to be productive writers, how to fit all that in, how to make it work, how to close the door in a way that actually means I get words on the page. So I have some practice at that.
Yes, definitely lots of practice. Well, that sounds like a lot of fun. Have you been a part of the Word on the Street Festival before?
I've been lucky enough to be part of it nearly every year unless I've been traveling, and I'm excited because I have 3 events this year. So the last one's with Arthur Slade. We'll be talking about self-promotion online, how to make that fun, how to have a good time doing it, but also I'm just super excited to see everybody else who's going to be here. The people who write and illustrate Fancy Nancy are going to be here, so my daughter and I are going to go and enjoy that. There's some great food bloggers who are coming to talk about their work. I'm just thrilled to see all these writers coming together in Saskatoon. It's a great day for me.
Celebrating literacy, and it's all free, which is another great component of the festival. What do you think the significance of a festival like this is for our community?
I think here in Saskatoon, both Yann Martel, my partner, and I have found a space where we can write and create and feel supported by people in the community. The writer-in-residence position at the public library is what brought us here. Both of us have done the job, and seeing the library being such a big part of Word on the Street, feeling that connection to books and the arts, it's just really satisfying when you do close the office door and get to work, to know that people out there are reading and interested in what we're doing.
And what words of wisdom do you have for other aspiring writers here in Saskatoon to show that you can in fact make it?
Well, I think the thing I always try and advise people to do is to read, and by reading a lot, I think what you do is connect with a wider written world. And so I think Word on the Street is a great space to find authors who you maybe have never encountered before and discover works that hopefully inspire you to get your words on the page. Both Yann and I are doing it. We live here in Saskatoon and we're lucky enough to have people reading our books, so there's no reason why someone else can't come to Word on the Street, feel inspired, feel ready to take on their own writing projects.
Absolutely. Well, if you want to hear more wisdom from Alice Kuipers, come and check her out at the Word on the Street Festival 2016. Much of it taking place right here at Civic Square and, of course, at the Francis Morrison Library. Alice, thank you so much for taking a few moments.
Thank you so much for having me.
We'll be right back after the break, so don't go anywhere. Books are a great way to learn about the history of Saskatchewan and other areas around the world. Shaw TV's Juanita Tutlin brings us a brief history on a significant part of Swift Current and how the city got its name.
The latest exhibition on display at the Swift Current Museum showcases something we all see, cross, and walk along in our city, the Swift Current Creek. But how much do we really know about its history? Curator of the exhibition The Creek, Stephanie Caduck, dug into the archives to share historical photos and her research about the social and natural history of the creek.
The social history goes all the way back to the First Nations presence, and there are a couple of petroglyphs that reflect their location along here. This region was one of the last regions where there were bison, so it was actually a hotly contested region among First Nations.
Flowing north from Cypress Hills, 160 kilometers to the South Saskatchewan River, the creek was the water source that brought life to our community.
The train arrived here in 1883, and that is how the community was built. The train required water for the steam engines, and so they made Swift Current a divisional point. So the first people who lived here after First Nations were CPR workers. In 1885, Swift Current was a very busy place. During the 1885 resistance, the Dominion government sent militia to Saskatchewan, and the train arrived in Swift Current, which was the terminus of the Battleford Trail, which would have been the route up north.
The creek was also a great source of business, from slaughterhouses that set up shop along the creek to cutting ice from the creek in the winter for ice boxes before there was electricity. While there was businesses, there was also fun, and the creek was also used for recreational purposes.
As early as 1910, there was a beach in Elmwood Park with change houses and swimming lessons. And people continued to swim in the creek until pools were built in the 1970s.
The exhibition also showcases the natural history of the creek, from the beavers and muskrats that call the creek their home to the many plants that grow along the water's edge and in the marsh areas.
Some of the birds that live along the creek actually live right in the reeds on the side of the creek.
Caduck says people's reactions have varied to the exhibition depending on where they are from and their own memories from growing up in the area.
People who are from somewhere else are interested because they wonder why the city is called Swift Current. And that comes from the Métis Rivière au Courant. It is, you know, a feature of the city, and so they're interested.
While the function of the creek may have altered, it still continues to be a major feature in our city. For Go, I'm Juanita Tuntland.
We have moved inside the Francis Morrison Library downtown, where author Yann Martel will be doing his discussions about his work during this year's Word on the Street Festival. Of course, Yann is well known for his #1 best-selling international novel, Life of Pi. Yann, of course, you have many other successful works like Beatrice and Virgil, etc., etc. Let's talk about your involvement in the Word on the Street. You've been involved in this festival several years. Why do you love this festival?
Well, what's nice about literary festivals is they make authors real. I mean, books are an amazing thing, but when you meet an author, you realize that it is a human product, that it comes from an individual's act of the imagination. And often it's really interesting meeting a writer, I don't find necessarily for the readings, but for what they have to say about their book. I find it's really interesting finding how a book was written, the process, the research. It just fleshes out the book even more. And it also makes you realize that it is a human creation, and there's that human being, that author who wrote it. So I find that really interesting. And also it's a very varied festival at Word on the Street. There's an adult section, there's a children's section, so it's really an all-family activity. So it's also just really fun.
And what do you think about Saskatoon's writing community? Of course, you're a very successful author, so is Alice. So what does that say about Saskatoon's literary community?
Well, it's a very vivid, very alive literary community. You know, Guy Vanderhaeghe lives here, for example. There's a very well-established tradition of prairie writing. And I think it's, you know, my theory is that it's the flatness of the landscape. That means the highest thing on it is the human being. So it doesn't make us arrogant in any way, but really it's the only thing happening in a sense. And so I think it brings attention to human stories. So the prairies in general, Manitoba, Saskatchewan and Alberta, has created a lot of great Canadian writing. And I think there's something favorable about that. I think there's a greater respect for stories here. There's a lot of stories in this place. So it's a very supportive community. You know, the Saskatchewan Writers Guild, the SWG, is very active. This library is a terrific library. It was rated, I think, once the second best library system in North America.
Wow.
It really serves its community really well. For example, they're backing this festival, which is great. And they offer terrific service for people of all ages, including outreach programs for, you know, senior citizens and all that. It's a very active library system. So generally, I'd say this is a city that really respects the book and enjoys books, and that's, I think, adds to its quality of life.
And of course, the library also has a great writer-in-residence program, which helps emerging and less established authors. How beneficial is the Word on the Street Festival for those emerging authors?
Oh, it's a great way, because as I said, you see all kinds of writers. So you can see the ones that interest you, you can talk to them. But you mentioned the Writer-in-Residence program, that's a great program. This year it's going to be Arthur Slade. He's a wonderful local writer, happens to be local this time. And he's wonderful at young adult stuff, but any stuff he'll read. And like the festival, you meet people who've written the books, you can talk to them. You know, you can have your book signed, but you can also just talk to them, ask them questions. They're there. You know, they'll talk about how they wrote their book. And that, you know, that's very stimulating to a young imagination, young in the mind, open to the world. So I think it's a very kind of nourishing festival. It's like a smorgasbord of stuff. You'll come out with a full stomach.
And do you find when you do these discussions about your works and other authors' works that people are wanting to engage and ask questions?
Yeah, I mean, listen, books are very, books stimulate your curiosity. It takes a long time to write a book. It's a very thoughtful process, but it yields something that, is light and entertaining, but at the same time teaches you something. A good book, it passes the time, of course. It's entertaining to read it, but it also tells you something about what it means to be alive, what it means to be human. So then to meet the creator of that, really completes the whole, process of reading and understanding it and taking it in.
Absolutely. All right, if you want to hear more from Yann Martel, make sure you check him out at this year's The Word on the Street Festival. It's happening right outside on 23rd Street, right outside of the library. Yann, thank you so much for joining us.
My pleasure, John.
It's hard to tear me away from all the books here at the Francis Morrison Library, but I have many more to look forward to during this year's The Word on the Street Festival. Don't forget, the event is coming up Sunday, September 18th from 10:30 to 5 p.m. To see a full schedule of activities, entertainment, and author readings, make sure you head to thewordonthestreet.ca. Thanks so much for joining us on today's show as we celebrate literacy here in Saskatoon. I'm your host, Janella Hamilton. Bye-bye for now.